Abdulla. My talk's going to be about 20 to 25 minutes. So then you have time for questions. I think we have about an hour. So one of the first questions that I get asked is, where are you from? I often get asked this a lot. And I've developed sort of a foolproof answer to, kind of divert attention from where I'm actually from. So on Mondays I'm Mediterranean, on Tuesdays I'm Arab, on Wednesdays I'm Levantine, on Thursdays I'm Palestinian, on Fridays I'm Canadian, and on the weekend I take a break from the identity thoughts. So basically I collect identities and I collect degrees. I am currently a MPhil PhD candidate in design at Goldsmiths, University of London. I'm a designer, writer, editor, and researcher. I'm also the founder, editor, and creative director of Kalimat, as well as run the Design Atelier, which is Kalimat's collaborative and interdisciplinary design studio. So Kalimat launched in November 2010, in part as a response as an Arab to the current representative visual identity that defines who we are. Kalimat acts as an open outlet for political, social, and cultural expression for Arabs from the region and its diaspora. It invites people to challenge the status quo, to share their ideas and opinions openly, and show the diversity of the region and the diaspora, as well as the diversity of the work Arabs worldwide do. So this was a video that we put together for the City exhibition, which is going on now in London. So now I'm going to just jump in to talk about what my research is. And my PhD research is called How Can We Integrate the Local in Design Education? And it looks at the concept of locality in design education in Amman, Jordan. And so this research aims to contribute to rethinking the future of design education in higher education, so universities in Amman. And this is a map of the questions that I look at when attempting to understand how people perceive design, the idea of policy, what are the references, what is guiding them, what does the curriculum look like, and how do we change people's perceptions of design. So people often attempt to define what design is, and design is a highly misunderstood discipline, and its peculiar nature is one of the main reasons its definition and purpose is constantly being contested. Some believe it is valued for its looks and not for its substance, making it a discipline that cannot be seen as anything other than as a form of art. From Delhi argues that anyone proposing a satisfactory definition of design knows it is a rather risky, if not impossible, enterprise. So there's also design being pulled in different directions, and in 1990, design educator and writer Richard Buchanan explained design being pulled in 3 different directions by what he calls the 3 jealous guardians. So the first is art and aesthetics, which concerns itself merely with form and appearance. The second is engineering and natural sciences, which relies on the functionality of products. And the third is the human sciences, which concerns itself with communication and the relations between products and people. So 20 years later, after he explained these jealous guardians, design programs have increased, and the place and definition of design continues to be debated. And I would like to argue that new guardians have entered the arena. The first is the discipline of design studies, which is in itself divided into 2 camps. On the one hand, there are those that discuss the need to institutionalize design as other subjects are in order for it to develop its own theory and practice. And on the other, those that believe that because design cuts across a number of specializations and disciplines, it produces an interdisciplinary path that integrates theory and practice borrowed from old and new disciplines, and needs to rely on those in order to develop its own. So, fueling this debate is another guardian, which is transformation within academia and the studio in the way designers approach their work. And in the past 5 years, terms like social design, design activism, and service design, which are inclusive of all design rather than being restricted to one, have been springing up in debates, articles, client briefs, and graduate programs. Designers are tired of being part of the problem rather than the solution, and so their priorities have shifted. And designers are now concerned with issues such as climate change, material shortage, the inequitable distribution of resources, political instability, and globalization. So, similar to the concept of design, social design is not easily identified. As Lise Matthews asks, does the term denote activism in pursuit of social change conducted through the medium of design, or does it refer to activism intended to reform design itself, or both? So this has created a crisis of sorts in design education. We have designers and educators, and I particularly looked at writings from Beirut, Katara, Swanson, and Norman, who discuss the need for design to move away from being simply value-free, unexposed to other disciplines and culture, being led by craftspeople who only look at skills, and is far too narrow and specialized. So they argue that design teaches design skills that do not serve much of a purpose beyond design itself. So there's no tools for analysis or any room to allow students to become broader thinkers. So Norman, Beirut, and Katara and Swanson essentially ask themselves the same question. How can design students, through design education, think beyond craft, avoid only talking to themselves, and help shape and place design in society? However, all these writers are writing from a Western perspective, and essentially avoiding discussion around the local context. Here's where integration of the local becomes essential to the development of design. If design will integrate other disciplines, it is important to incorporate theories relevant to the context of the location. What I mean by this is that theories that are not just limited to a Eurocentric view. And what I would like to argue is that for design to move into the realm of social responsibility and interdisciplinarity, it must first develop design programs from a local perspective. So initially what I'm saying is a curriculum that reflects understanding of the needs of the local society on the one hand, and the knowledge and technology produced by the world at large on the other. So design educator and writer Victor Margolin says that design is regarded merely as an arena of commercial application, curiosity, a place of trade activity, rather than a resource and a place for interdisciplinary collaboration that can give new life and purpose to the conception and planning of products. This quote definitely relates to my interest in the idea of design fiction. I am particularly interested in design fiction as a pedagogic practice, how designers can imagine futures and engage with them. Fiction allows for many possibilities. It makes the imagination thrive, and even though the setting is imagined, technologies used can be real and rational. I'm also very interested in ideas of interdisciplinarity and collaboration. I feel that we're so busy trying to be original that we forget to collaborate. And so it's important not to see everybody as competition and become guarded and defensive, but rather to be in touch with them and how these projects can work together. I believe these two notions are important for the future of design in the Arab world, which is why I'm also interested in ideas of specialization and generalization. And I think we focus too much on the former and not enough on the latter, because programs, since they are largely imported from America, concentrate on specialization, such as graphic design, interior design, product design, and so on. Looking at general design programs allows students to experiment with all disciplines, create much more conceptual work, engage in theory, and have a well-rounded understanding of design as a whole. I'm very interested in the concept of design as cultural. I feel that design is not the same in two places. And I'm also a believer in not looking outward for ideas. I think that design across the region has a lot of work to do, but institutions with design programs have been around for over 30 years. Examples such as Yarmouk University and the University of Jordan are both examples of older design programs. So we have a history of it, but our references are missing. So now I've told you a little bit about my research and things that I'm interested in, so I'd like to share with you a number of ideas that I feel are relevant to promote a local design discourse and to move forward. So in 1983, designer Moscow McNally, which appears on your screen, many of you know, said that without criticism, we will never have a profession. And so the design discipline lacks the cultural criticism, even 30 years after the statement. And I feel that the cultural industries in the Arab world suffer from the same problem, and that we need to create a culture of criticism in order to develop, move forward, and engage in complex topics. Do not blindly borrow ideas, which goes back to the fact that some of our references are missing that we're just not referencing. We need to think of how we can transform design in Arabic. I mentioned my interest in not looking outward, but rather think of design's role in your community, in your city, in your country, and think about what's around you and how these can provide you with references and inspiration. Build a library of Arabic typefaces. There has been a lot of work on this in the past few years, and there's an increased demand. So I urge you to share your work, put it out there, and see who you can collaborate with. translate terminology. Design is very much tied to the Western world. Working on translating the terminology will make design more accessible to a wider Arab audience that may feel alienated from it due to language. Also, if you're writing on design in Arabic, it is important to get it translated into other languages and spread it out internationally. Creating a publishing culture. So building a stronger local and regional publishing culture that can encourage the sharing of work and criticism. This can also set standards, build networks and collaborations. Turkey provides a great example of how the design profession has recognized the need for and benefit from publishing and promoting their own designers. So do not let dominant countries provide lower standards. One writer called Sherry Blankish said this lack of local material forces their students and professionals to look to foreigners and foreign styles because they are the only design publications available to them. Write about your work. I believe that designers should be both practitioners and thinkers, learn how to write about their work and to speak about it. And I would like to conclude this with a brief discussion on the case of Australia in design. In 1989, Tony Fry claimed that Australia has little to offer in design history as currently constituted. It has considerable amount to offer a design history that might be. And even though a lot has changed in Australia's case since Fry initially wrote this article, I would like to ascribe his description to the Arab world in 2013. So I would personally substitute design history with design in general. And rather than contribute to marginality, something which most academic disciplines are guilty of, looking at design within a local context can help countries across the Arab region as a whole contribute to the design discipline, not just as another footnote, but by empowering them to challenge the nature and authority of the current Eurocentric models, which will not be based on the same agenda, objects, rhetoric, or concerns. And so, as Fry wrote this in 1989, Australia now does many graduate programs, the design philosophy papers, and many famous designers have studied in Australia and continue to teach in Australia. And this is how you can get in touch with me. And I thank you very much for your time.